Mademoiselle Boulanger had a very peculiar way of approaching the development of a musician. It was beyond skill. It was the awareness of what you hear, the awareness of what you want to do with what you hear, either directly by playing it on an instrument or singing it or imagining it and therefore composing it or perhaps transcribing it, improvising it, notating it, organizing your thoughts, but always listen to the layered voice leading and always be aware of the music from within. The rules are there because they need to teach you how to organize the behavior of the voices, the parts, the lines in the music, or harmony, contrapoint, or simply put, the narrative line and the phrase that reaches or not a climax and not necessarily one, how to organize the next thought that comes after the following thought when you compose, or how to organize the interpretation of the thoughts which are already on the score and that you have to give and bring back to life from the paper with that same sense of meaning and purpose. And therefore, I find it very important to be the hyphen that translates this tradition of hers, which was the full musicianship and not only a skill-based knowledge for self-serving competition and other performance purposes only. It is a good gauge, but the important in your own blossoming development as a personality, as a musician, is to go task by task to have done the best of what you have been able to do. And not to give in or give up, not to surrender to some easy way that can be a shortcut, but really do the struggle. And the purpose of it is to be able to hear everything in real time, with score or without, to write it from memory on page, or to play it from memory on an instrument, or to follow it when it's sang or played or performed. So this musicianship is a tool towards the music making, which is to connect to this language, to the psyche of humans for spiritual uplifting or for personal enjoyment. Somehow it's like poetic as well as scientific in the organization of the thoughts. And she insisted very much on learning the gestures of the intervals, which represent the movement of the voices or the parts or the lines, who in dialogue in a way like humans interact in conversation. And it can be up for an orchestra, or it can be a quartet or a quintet, or it can be just a single performer. The idea is that you bring a purpose to what you do, you stay humble compared to what is your calling. And the serving of the muse goes through the repetitive practicing for the details, but then once you play or perform or sing or conduct or compose or write an article about the piece that you want to convey the attention of the reader, listener, or a student about, then you embody the musical idea of the composer, the intent beyond the notation. And the notation becomes sometimes a drawback of how to handle it instrumentally or how to organize it ensemble-wise. It's not about rewriting the piece, because you can write your own, but it's to serve the intent of the composer and not only go through recordings of others or even how others have solved that enigma that is musical thought left for us like a bottle in the sea, and we pick it up centuries later and we bring it back to life. Possibly not the way it was meant, but what it in a way it means to us. And so Mademoiselle was a very big believer in music beyond styles. Not that she didn't acknowledge the differences of Baroque, classical, romantic, modern, or neoclassical, or serial, or atonal, or post-tonal, and all these different tools of expression through the different time periods. But there was something that she liked very much to do, is draw parallel between, let's say, medieval or Renaissance music with something romantic, and find how the musical gesture of a given expressive interval represents a psychological expression, uplifting, hoping, eventually yearning, or even without syllables to be pronounced within lyrics, but how the music is a language as vehicles through its gestures in terms of their sound painting, if you want to call it so, for the soundscapes. The impression that you are talking to the soul and beyond the individual languages of each culture. Of course, then you add to that the individual personality of each of the people whom she had as students, and that's how I'm very also honored and humbled to have students from such different backgrounds, and I respect, like she did, the differences for where you come from in terms of your psyche and your aesthetic background and your respectful of your beliefs, and all these elements that are constitutive of a student who comes to seek something which is beyond, as I said earlier, a skill which is essential in order to be communicating through the tool of it, the musicianship that is in you. And in that sense, the individualities are very important, to be acutely listening to what the students are yearning for, to express. It's not necessarily an aesthetic of the teacher, it's not necessarily an aesthetic of a composer. It's about what it means for them. What is the meaning of a silence? What is the meaning of a leap, of an interval, and how this is expressive? And therefore, when Mademoiselle would teach us, it was always to be aware of what we hear and play it, even if we do sight reading of scores that are too many notes from orchestra or chamber music parts to play on the piano, to try to find ways to at least follow some of the voices and go back to it, like on a book that is intriguing you, and because you love it, you want to know more about it. And I find that this approach is longer than just the skill-based, through the knowledge of harmonic progressions, of voice leadings, of layered hearing, of pulses with up and down beats that bring you to another pulse through syncopation or hemiola if it's in three. Or, in other words, it's not analytical ingredients that you can enumerate. It's more about appreciating by admiration and perhaps by disbelief or perhaps even dislike of a given style, that you get to really tell yourself, I'm challenged, I'm interested to understand, and if I don't get it or I seem to reject it, I want to understand what is there in this. And since the music world of reflective music, or at least so-called classical, which obviously encompasses way more styles than that, and centuries than that, but nobody can be universally knowledgeable in all, but the awareness of what you hear brings you through the curiosity, in the sense of the philosophical curiosity, to open yourself until you make sense of it for yourself, with the help of articles, teachers, courses, and examples of performers who do or composers who did, because there is always the present and then there is the past, and it's reenacted after the composition, like a painting has been painted. And then all of a sudden you take the brush and you get back to it, and you try to replay it, and therefore repaint it or retell it. And all the meaning you put into it is the culture of your life, of your readings, of your experiences, of the meaning of death, of the meaning of parting, of the meaning of living, of the meaning of hoping, yearning, of the meaning of deception. A lot of the composers expressed through either sacred music, either secular music, the path of human experience through life, different seasons of it, different experiences of it. And so just like in a playwright, you can read about elements of our psyche as a collective human beings on earth, with the individualities and the cultures and the languages. And somehow the music doesn't transcend them. It's just that it allows to become more aware and tolerant and admirative of the others. And at the same time that you learn more, you become more discerning, and therefore by being discerning, more critical. And to yourself, and sometimes to the point to which you could self-censor yourself by deciding that too much music has been already written, why me adding to it? Or too much great performances of this piece were done, why me play it, or sing it, or conduct it? But I think that that is why it's important to bring through the sense of beauty, literally spiritual uplifting, not necessarily only in sacred aspect of things, but in daily. It's the moment where we need the situation where we are placed in front of the miracle of life, and therefore music, in a way, it's the, perhaps it's a bit easy to say, but is the soundtrack of life, which allows us to think, to reflect, to hear it inside us. We don't necessarily have to speak it or play it, but it's the inner garden. It's something that creates reflection and brings a lot of personal emotion and meaning to things, because you see it in a smile, a perfume, a friendship, a love, an attachment, and then a missing. And all this music brings a lot of solace as well as hope. And I think that it's not only entertaining or only dancing, but also it's not only to worship or only to reflect, but also. And Mademoiselle was able to find in each student their individual yearning and adjust and adapt to them. The way she taught me is not the way she taught my fellow co-students, even if our age difference was big at the time since I was a child prodigy. But I was a little old man rather than a child prodigy, in the sense that she was a very youthful mind in a very old body, and discovering, sight reading, exploring in that sense music like an archaeologist who tries to understand the beauties and the meanings, and perhaps is misled by their own lack of knowledge. But the problem with a lot of knowledge is sometimes that you lose the intuitive meaning to what you need music for. And so Mademoiselle was very keen at bringing us very close to ourselves and what we are responsible for, what we search for, and how we transmit it to others, how we are a hyphen between the past of music and the present into the future through generations of students or children, and how there is some kind of torch of these values that are spiritual, that are meaningful, that are the grounds for the structure of our personalities. And which gives meaning to what we do, the narrative meaning to what we play or write or imagine or improvise or recite or interpret. Therefore, translate, in that sense of translation from one art to the other, from one form of art to another, from a written to a spoken or a sung to a played. And Mademoiselle was very intensely involved in transmitting this responsibility for each of us who were studying. Of course, it was tough because she would be very critical, but not necessarily meaning with a mean way to discourage, let's say. It was more about a philosophical way to define the right from not right in what we're doing, and discover an ingredient that we can improve in the way we express ourselves. It's the weakness in a composition is not the composition, is some element that doesn't go. So she was having the capacity to personally enter in your musical intent by hearing it or reading it, and indicating you how you can express more what you want to say, rather than her trying with her knowledge of having been a student of Fauré, friend of Stravinsky, and famous teacher of Copland. And so then that wouldn't mean that you have to write like them, because that is her inner world. She was open-minded to your inner worlds, to each of our inner worlds. And that humility with admiration and expectation, when it was positive, was extremely driven for the student, who felt encouraged and empowered, and discouraging when we felt like we were not in the right way of doing or going about it. So it wasn't discouraging meanly or encouraging falsely. It was truly being extremely vigilant, and at the same time very positive about doing the best of what you are given through effort and self-awareness of what you hear and you can make in music. And she didn't define it by professions, she defined it as a holistic musicianship. And that holistic musicianship is what was the core of her teaching, that you can be anything in music, but you're mainly a musician who hears and who feels and who has a sense of cultivated understanding that you translate and transmit through your skill or whatever you reach to. And I am very honored to and humbled to be the hyphen between her and my students. And I hope very much that in the future they will carry these values, which are so important and essential beyond the knowledge and the skill. Thank you very much.